All right. I want to talk about um, the Donald Trump criminal case that is getting the least amount of attention today, recently. That's the case out of Manhattan, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And he brought the first criminal indictment against Donald Trump. I think it was last March. He was the first one to do that. He kind of broke the floodgates on indicting former presidents. It's the first time that had ever happened in the history of the United States. And I think, at least in some ways, it kind of lessened the pressure on Fani Willis and Jack Smith in them bringing their subsequent indictments. So what did he indict Donald Trump for? It's the hush money payments to cover up the affair, or whatever you want to call it. The interaction between Trump and Stormy Daniels. I think he paid her 120 or 130 grand or something like that, whatever. And the case involves how those payments were made, how they were characterized within Trump's business versus the campaign, who benefited from those payments, the timing of those payments relative to the election, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a 34-count indictment against Donald Trump, 34 felony counts. He faces 4 years in prison on each count. That's like 136 years in prison. He will never in a million years get 136 years in prison from this case, but he might get 8 or 10. I'm just saying. And so when he brought this indictment, and then Jack Smith brought the Mar-a-Lago indictment, and then Jack Smith brought the Washington, D.C. indictment, and then Fani Willis brought the Fulton County, Georgia indictment. Alvin Bragg was also the first one to get a trial date. And I don't remember the exact trial date. It was either in May or March of 2024. And he signaled pretty early on, I think it was late March, he signaled pretty early on that he would be willing to move that trial date because he recognized that those other cases brought by Fani Willis and Jack Smith were more important than this one, because those involved efforts to overturn an election, overthrow democracy, and everything that comes along with that. This is a documents business records case. And which is not to minimize it, because you know, New York being kind of the financial center of the West, documents cases are incredibly common, and business records cases are incredibly common in the Manhattan DA's office, and they handle them frequently, and they tend to handle them well. This is not something that they are not practiced at, put it that way. And interestingly, you know, him signaling that he would be willing to move that trial date, Judge Tanya Chutkan in the DC J6 case, the January 6th case, efforts to overturn the election case, she took that cue and she set the trial in that case for March 4th for Donald Trump. And the trial judge in Alvin Bragg's case is a guy named Juan Merchan. And Juan Merchan and Judge Tanya Chutkan in D.C. have spoken with each other. They have talked to each other. We don't know how many times. We don't know about what. But Judge Chutkan has acknowledged that the two of them have been in touch. Alvin Bragg took a lot of grief when he was first elected, because it appeared that he was either slow walking this case against Trump, or that he had decided to not pursue it at all. One of his, I think a few of his more high-profile assistant prosecutors quit because of that. At least two of them did. One of them wrote a book. And then got called before, you know, the House Weaponization of Government Committee by, you know, Jim Jordan, and was called to testify in front of that committee. And You can imagine how that went. But in the time between Alvin Bragg took office and brought this indictment this past March, he did get, like 16 or 17 criminal convictions against the Trump organization. And he did put Trump's CFO, Alan Weisselberg, in prison for a year or however long it was, a few months. I mean, dude's in his late 70s and he had to do a few months on Rikers. I have never heard one positive thing about Rikers, let alone if you're going there in your late 70s. And, so I don't think that this case is getting the credit that it deserves. I don't think that Alvin Bragg is getting the credit that he deserves now. I was firmly in the camp of what the hell is this guy doing during the first year and a half that he was in office, because it didn't look like he was doing anything. Trump tried to get this case removed to federal court. That got denied. And like I said, this is a documents case. It's business documents. It's checks, some of which have Donald Trump's signature on them. It's ledgers, it's bookkeeping. How were these classified? And Alvin Bragg has all of those documents. It's another criminal case that Donald Trump will be required to be present in the courtroom for every single day of trial, whether he wants to be or not. Now, I don't know that we know what the actual trial date for this case is going to be, because Trump has so many coming up. But, as I've said many times before, Donald Trump will be a convicted felon before Election Day 2024. And I believe that at the moment in time when Donald Trump's physical existence on this planet comes to a conclusion, that at that moment he will be inside of a prison cell. And I love that for him. Have a great night.